chapter 9, starting on page 88 notes. But before that, I'd like to show you a couple of interesting videos, and at the end of this, I'm going to ask you why you think I decided to show you those videos. And I apologize for the sound. It seems to be quite loud, and I can't seem to turn it down. So let me show you two videos, and then let me see if you remember these.
The 2008 Summer Games, you're looking now at the footsteps of history, quite literally coming from the old center of Beijing near Tiananmen Square to the new area of Beijing, this national stadium along the north-south axis. You're looking at a cinematic device employed by Zhang Yimou here. This is actually almost animation, a footstep a second, 29 in all, to signify the 29 Olympiads.
How many of you remember
said
watching?
earlier that aspects of this opening ceremony are almost like cinema in real time. Well, this is quite literally cinema.
This is signifying China's march of history outward from the center of Beijing. And now the footsteps arrive at the stadium.
That's the first one.
Yimou refers to as Confucius Travels as 810 disciples of Confucius here holding bamboo scrolls.
Bob, yeah, we're back here in one of the really powerful Chinese traditions, Confucian thought. Confucius was a scholar who lived 2,500 years ago in an unbelievably chaotic time in Chinese history, known as the Spring and Autumn period. He wandered around giving advice to leaders about how to have order, how to have harmony in a society.
And the bamboo scrolls, if anyone asks the question, what's significant about holding the Olympics in China? Well, how many places could you go around the world where the culture is old enough where you can say, oh, by the way, the Chinese invented paper and printing? And that's actually true here.
And in fact, this is a symbolic statement, as we see in the middle of the stadium right now, the bamboo giving way piece by piece, and then rising up from the center of the stage now, Chinese movable printing blocks. Something that many Chinese viewers will recognize. This is wind, and recalls one of Confucius's most famous phrases, the idea that the virtuous leader can pass across his subjects with the ease of the wind.
Time after time, we've seen it in this opening ceremony already. Massive scope, minute precision.
And there is the Chinese character for harmony, which will make a number of appearances tonight. A core philosophical conception.
And a core political ideal as well. Hu Jintao talks constantly about the harmonious society.
That's right, the idea of a 和谐社会, or a harmonious society, really right at the heart of Chinese political doctrine.
Glad you said that.
Here, by the way, is another image that evokes that same tradition, the notion of drops of water spilling onto an empty pond, that sort of stillness and silence that comes from Confucian self-cultivation, but also appears, of course, in the Taoist and Buddhist traditions as a mark of inner peace leading to external peace. about harmony in China today is there's so many profoundly disharmonious things here in a way, the challenges with the environment, with urbanization, and so forth. So this is really representing an ideal for the Chinese as they watch this.
This is Zhang Yimou creating a cinematic blockbuster in real time on the floor of a stadium.
Harmony making its third appearance there. A symbol that is perhaps the most famous in China, the Great Wall, 4,000 miles long, built and rebuilt over almost a 1,000-year period as this country tried to keep barbarians out. And now in a moment of symbolism that is just remarkable, the director Zhang Yimou brings the Great Wall down and replaces it with blossoming flowers, the Chinese symbol of peace.
Again, the reconciling of opposites.
Absolutely, and again, a desire to replace one image of China with another one.
And how'd they do it? They did it with people. Not computers, not hydraulics, people. It's unbelievable.
Jaw-dropping. Don't go away. Why would you?
All right, what do you think? Why do you think I showed that to you?
Controlling the people.
Huh?
Controlling the people. Like
Controlling the people, maybe?
Dominance of
What
China.
else?
How small we are when you look at the global. We're just a tiny seashore, tiny piece
Okay.
of sand on the seashore.
All right. I've asked you during this class, before the end of the class, to read the entire book of Revelation. Okay, all in one sitting. Okay, and I want you to think of it like a movie, like this, like a series of images that were meant. You notice the commentator says, well, this means such and such, and this means such and such. You try to write down what you see. Oh, there was a bunch of blocks that lifted from the floor. And from those blocks, there were like these rings, these waves as the blocks lifted it. And I was like, oh, what does that symbolism mean? Okay, without the commentator, you can go back and you can find this on YouTube, and it's an hour something long. Okay, and you can watch that whole video, and there's no commentary, and you have no idea what any of that means. You have none. Okay, it's an hour long. It all has symbolism that it means this or it means that. Without that, you're kind of lost. But I want you, I'd love to be the guy who creates a movie with the Revelation images in a movie. And John seeing this and seeing that, and then was this, and then, my wife just, her eyes rolled up in her head, just, oh. But the ultimate movie, huh? Anyway. So, I want you to think of this Revelation as a series of images like this that are on display, a massive display, the scope, the minute detail of everything that's said here as this display of communicating a message. Okay, and that's what we're doing here today, is we're deciphering those things. So we're in chapter 9. Now, if you go to the back of your book, the little thing here, we've had the 7 churches, 7. We have 7 seals, Before the seventh, there's a sealing. Chapter 8 is the seventh seal. The seventh seal comprises 4 trumpets, the symbol, the number of judgment. Then you have 3 woes that are the other 3 seals. So in the midst of all this detail, make sure that you don't miss the big picture, that there are these numerical unfoldings that tell you what that thing's about. And this is a good chapter to kind of bring forth some of those things. So if I can get a volunteer to read the first 12 verses of chapter 9.
Then the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star from heaven which had fallen to the earth, and the key of the bottomless pit was given to him. He opened the bottomless pit, and smoke went up out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the smoke of the pit. Then out of the smoke came locusts upon the earth, and power was given them, as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were told not to hurt the grass of the earth, nor any green thing, nor any tree, but only the men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not permitted to kill anyone, but to torment for 5 months. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings a man. And in those days men will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, and death flees from them. The appearance of the locusts was like horses prepared for battle, and on their heads appeared to be crowns like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like the hair of women, and their teeth were like the teeth of lions. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots, of many horses rushing to battle. They have tails like scorpions and stings, and in their tails is their power to hurt men for 5 months. They have as king over them the angel of the abyss. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in the Greek he has the name Apollyon. The first woe is past. Behold, 2 woes are still coming after these things.
Okay, so this is the 5th trumpet, the beginning of the first 3 woes. And when you read this and listen to it, I think of this thing. In fact, I was sitting there in 2008 watching that opening ceremony and thinking, that's Revelation. That is what John saw, was these images. And they have such power in connoting something, a concept. And this is a great chapter for making some connections between some things. So first, he says, then a 5th angel said, I saw a star from heaven, which had fallen to the earth. He did not see it fall, it had already fallen. And I'm going to make the conjecture that this is Satan. This is the concept of sin and Satan. Luke 10:18 says, he replied, this is Jesus speaking, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. So Jesus said, I saw Satan fall. John says, I saw a star that had fallen. Okay, and remember, stars are leaders or angels. And Revelation 12 we'll get to, there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, the ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. So we have him, he was already thrown down at the time John looks. And the key to the bottomless pit was given to Satan. So what is this bottomless pit? It seems that just like Jesus has the key to open heaven, Satan has the key to open this bottomless pit. Now, is this bottomless pit hell, or is it some other place? So let's go to Luke chapter 10. He who listens to you listens to me. He who rejects you rejects me. But he who rejects me rejects him who sent me. Now he's talking about sending out the 72. This is Jesus. The 72 returned with joy and said, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. And he replied, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. I have, which is quoted above, And it says, I have given you authority, the key, to trample snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. However, do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. Okay, so he says, I gave you power over snakes and scorpions. Is he really talking about snakes and scorpions? What's he talking about? He's talking about the power of evil and what Satan does, isn't he? He says, I gave you power over Satan and what Satan does when he talks about snakes and scorpions. Yes, it's sin? No? Okay. These scorpions are spoken of as spirits. This bottomless pit, or this abyss, does not appear to be Hades, but it seems to be a limited area of influence. From Luke 8, verse 31, the legion of evil spirits in the possessed man. Legion, he replied, this is the man with many demons. He says, because many demons had gone into him, and they begged him repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. Okay? Not to hell, as we noted. It's not Hades. God decides what limits Satan has. I'm talking specifically about Job here. The Lord said to Satan, very well then, everything he has in your hands, but on the man himself do not lay a finger. And Job chapter 2, verse 6, the Lord said to Satan, very well then, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life. So he is given some control, but not unlimited. Revelation 11:7, now when they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up from the abyss, remember he got sent to the abyss, he has the keys to the abyss, will attack them and overpower and kill them. The beast which you saw once was, now is not, will come up out of the abyss and go down to his destruction. Hell, or Gehenna, or Hades, is a place of everlasting fire, the permanent place. Matthew 25:41. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, to the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. And Revelation 20:10, the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet have been thrown. They will be tormented day and night forever and ever. We'll get to 14 and 15 in Revelation, and there's some other places we could look at. In antithesis, Christ is the bright and morning star and holds the keys to death and Hades. So Satan is the antithesis of Jesus. He's a star, but he has fallen. He is given some power. He is given some control over the abyss, which is the habitation of sin and evil. Not the permanent ending of sin and evil, but the habitation of sin and evil until then. He opened the bottomless pit, and smoke went up out of the pit, like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the smoke of the pit. And out of this smoke comes locusts. So some feel this translation is somewhat garbled and should be more like, from the shaft rose something like the smoke of a great furnace. And that something was locusts, something akin to scorpions. Evil influences evil men. Let's take a look at locusts. Let's move over to page 90. Locusts are first introduced in chapter 10 of Exodus. And they are there in order to get Pharaoh to change his mind about letting the Israelites go. So 1 Kings 8:35-40. When the heavens are shut up and there's no rain because your people have sinned against you, and when they pray towards this place and confess your name and turn from their sin because you have afflicted them. Okay, turn from their sin because of their affliction. Then hear from heaven and forgive the sin of your servants, your people Israel. Teach them the right way to live, and send rain on the land you gave your people for an inheritance. When the famine or plague comes to the land, or blight or mildew, locusts, There's locusts and grasshoppers. When any enemy besieges them in any one of their cities, whatever disaster or disease may come, and when a prayer or plea is made by any of our people Israel, each one aware of the afflictions of his own heart, and spreading out his hands toward his temple, then hear from heaven, your dwelling place, forgive and act, deal with each man according to all he does, since you know his heart, for you alone know the hearts of all men, so that they will fear you all the time they live in the land you gave your fathers. So these things are symbols of sin or pain that are brought upon people to get them to change their minds. When I shut up the heavens, 2 Chronicles 7:13, when I shut up the heavens so that there is no rain, or command locusts to devour the land, or send plagues among my people, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. We can go to Joel 1 and 2, and we'll shortly hear some of Joel. These are symbols of something to get people to turn to God. Okay? I told you about the plagues. The Cyprian plague was a guy, this guy, Cyprian, was baptizing hundreds of people a day because of the plague. Okay? When the world fails you, where do you turn? Okay? That's what God wants you to do. He allows those things to happen in order to get you to change, right? What is the old saying? It's not a very old saying now. No pain, no gain. Okay? If you're fat, dumb, and happy, you'll always be fat, dumb, and happy. Until the day that you're unhappy. Then you have some motivation to change. So locusts are spoken of symbolically as an influence that is applied to encourage repentance. They are given the authority of the scorpion, the symbol of evil influences, evil spirits. Ezekiel 2:6, and you, son of man, do not be afraid of them for their words. Do not be afraid, though briars and thorns are all around you, and you live among scorpions. Do not be afraid of what they say or terrified by them, though they are a rebellious house. The locusts are not physical locusts. These are symbols of pain that causes people to change their thinking. Now, let's take a look at the locusts of the time. Okay, here from Exodus 10:15. They covered all the ground until it was black. They devoured all that was left after the hail, everything growing in the fields and on the fruit trees. Nothing green remained on the tree or plant in all the land of Egypt. Okay? Now, take a look at our verse here in Revelation. Is that the same action that's happening here? Okay, these scorpions have power on earth for a while. They were told not to hurt the grass of the earth, nor any green thing, nor touch any tree. Okay? So are these the same kind of things, the real scorpions, or something else? Something else. Okay? Now, a lot of times in Scripture you have a parallel, that it says one thing and then it says something else underneath it. Proverbs are full of couplets. It says it one way, then it says it another, and it draws a parallel between the two. Notice that it has an interesting parallel here, and we've touched on this before, and everybody goes, well, I don't know if the grass is people, but take a look at this. He says, nor any tree, but only the men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Okay? So he's almost like he's making a contrast between those that have the seal and those that don't have the seal, and those that don't have the seal he calls grass, trees, and etc. Okay? Does that make sense? So that's where early on when I say the green grass may be representative of, as a symbol of the general population of people.
Believers.
Huh?
Of believers.
No, not of leaders. They're the green.
Of believers.
Believers?
The grass would be the general population of believers.
No, I don't. Not necessarily. Just general population.
Okay, but these scorpions weren't to harm the grass.
You weren't to harm the grass. We're to harm the people. Only those that don't have the seal. Okay. Now the question is, well, how can that be? Didn't plague hurt everybody? Didn't hunger hurt everybody? Didn't war hurt everybody? Okay. But again, we're talking spiritually here. So let's flip the page. These are spiritual locusts. So we have a contrast here. These evil influences do not kill men, but torment them. The word torment is used only in Revelation, and it's the word basanismos. And another version of the word basanizo is used in is a verb in 2 Peter, Mark, Luke, etc. It can be interpreted as physical pain, or it can be interpreted as mental anguish. One commentator said that it's like physical pain causes mental anguish. So 2 Peter 2:8, speaking about Lot, he says, if he rescued Lot, a righteous man, who was distressed by the filthy lives of lawless men, for that righteous man, living among them day after day, was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds that he saw and heard. Okay? So I'm making the connection that this torturer is allowed to torture people. You ever notice how Christians seem to get through things without going crazy over stuff? Okay? They're not tormented by things that happen in the world because they are outside of the world. Yes, they're affected by pricing. Yes, they're affected by wars and disease, etc. But we're not tormented by them. Okay? Have you ever been to a funeral of a non-Christian? Well, they still talk about God and going to heaven, don't they? Right? Have you ever been to someone who has no belief in God whatsoever, and how deep a torment that is, opposed to going to a funeral?
It's very empty.
It is.
Very
It's
empty.
very empty. You know, my dad died, and he was put in an urn, and 2 years later, my brother said, well, let's pour him in some river. They poured him in some river. It's done. That's all there is to it. I didn't even get an invite to come. My mother, we put her ashes in an urn, went out on the ferry in Seattle and tossed it in the water, and that's what she wanted. But there was no ceremony, no hope. It was all lost. My conjecture is here that the torment we see here is because of sin, and that sin destroys lives. Those who know about God and walk according to his principles aren't affected by those sins. He says Lot was anguished in his soul, not because he had the physical consequences of that sin, but that sin was occurring around him.
Doesn't that bother us?
It does bother
Yeah,
me.
that is
Don't we
torment
look
in
in
a
this
way.
world
It
today?
torments us,
Yeah.
but it doesn't destroy us.
No,
Okay?
because we have hope.
Yeah. I mean, those people who are lost in sin are ultimately destroyed, but they destroy their lives because of their actions. Now, they're allowed to be tortured for 5 months. They were not permitted to kill anyone, but to torment for 5 months. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings a man. Okay? So this 5 months may represent an incomplete or defined period of time. We go to 5, the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins. Why 5? Why did Jesus, in teaching that parable, 5 wise and 5 foolish? Did he just take 10, the ultimate whole, and say half and half? Is that what his purpose? Or was there some, other, 5? I don't know. Why 5 talents in Matthew 25? So this period of spiritual or mental anguish leads men to, and it says, they seek death but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. Verse 6, okay? Death is preferred to torment. Job 3:20 and 20 through 22. Where is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul, which long for death, but it committeth not, or cometh not, and dig for it more than for hid treasures, which rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave. Okay, so you say, I'm happy about getting to the grave because this life is torment, isn't it? Sometimes I go to King James. It's like reading Shakespeare in a way. How many of you guys prefer the King James? Just because my wife does. I think it's very poetic. Anyway, Jeremiah 8:3. Whenever I banish them, all the survivors of this evil nation will prefer death to life, declares the Lord Almighty. Ecclesiastes 4:2. And I declare that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. The anguish of the soul, the second death, cannot be quenched by the physical death. Luke 16:23, there. In hell, he was in torment. This is one of the places we get our concepts. Remember that diagram I had? You know, this is a parable. Did Jesus teach things in a parable that weren't necessarily true, or I don't know that. Do preachers make up stories to illustrate illustrate something that isn't necessarily true? Say a guy did such and such. It's like, okay, let's just make it up a story to illustrate a point. But here we say, okay, this is the way it works, and there's a separation until the final judgment. In hell, where he was in torment, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. So he called him, Father Abraham, have pity on me and send Lazarus to dip his finger in the water and cool my tongue, because I am agony in this fire. But Abraham replied, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, while Lazarus received bad things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all this, between us and you, a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who want to go from here to you cannot, nor can anyone cross over from there to us. There seems to be that maybe this is talking about spiritual anguish, the soul's anguish. People are struggling during this time. Christians can see a way out of it, but those who don't can't seem to find it, and then they begin to hate their lives and say, just kill me now, Lord. All right, so then these locusts are started to be described a little further, and then this is where folks start to kind of point to things in history. I think God here is illustrating his mechanisms, he's illustrating concepts. He hasn't really introduced Rome yet. He hasn't talked about physical things, but now everybody starts to point to the armies coming in that are called locusts. So here we have locusts that were like horses equipped for battle. And notice that here Scripture says it's always like. It doesn't say they were horses. It says they were like horses equipped for battle. And this is very similar to Joel 1 and 2. On their heads were what looked like crowns of gold. So they weren't crowns of gold, the victory crowns, but they had the appearance of it. They had the deception of having a crown. Now, if you read some of the history, there were all sorts of cults that came out in the first number of years, Christian-like cults that talked of a heaven where there was lots of drinking and loose women. Okay, it's kind of like the Islamics, They have this heaven which has 70 virgins, is it? Is that the number? I don't remember what the number is. It's this perfect place where you get to go to if you So they had all these idealistic religions come in, and they say, well, here's a place you can go, worship this thing, and here's your heaven if you do it this way. These are the false gods coming. Or could this represent the invasion of armies? So they have tails like scorpions. Has a symbolic significance, and some indicate that these are symbols of the invading Goths, Visigoths, or Huns, or even that they represent modern military helicopters. They have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek Apollyon. Is this a satanic angel? Is this Satan? Each church had his own angel. There was an angel of the altar. There was an angel of the waters. There's all sorts of angels. Is this just a satanic angel, or is this Satan himself? And we're given a clue here because his name in Hebrew is Abaddon, which is in Hebrew is destruction. It's used in the following verses. The destruction of Sheol, Job 31, 11 through 12. For that would have been shameful, a sin to be judged. It is a fire that burns to destruction. The word there is Abaddon. It would have uprooted my harvest. Destruction personified, which is essentially what we're seeing here. Death is naked before God. Abaddon lies uncovered. Proverbs 15:11. Death and destruction, and that word destruction is Abaddon, lie open before the Lord. How much more the hearts of men? Proverbs 27:20. Death and Abaddon are never satisfied, and neither are the eyes of man. Abaddon and death say, only a rumor of it has reached our ears. And Psalms 88:11. Is your love declared in the grave, your faithfulness in Abaddon? So that's Abaddon. What is Apollyon? Apollyon is translated the destroyer. Again, it's a personification of something. It's either sin or Satan himself or an angel that has equal power and realm. Okay? Now, let's do a summary. There's a lot to take in. This first woe, this first warning, gives us a picture of moral and spiritual decay, which brings torment to the souls of men. The torment does not kill, but it abides for a definite period, 5 months. Sin is responsible for bringing this decay into the world, which behind which is Satan with his diabolical purpose to destroy. Sin is disobedience to God's rule and is accompanied by deception and mental or spiritual torment from which man cannot escape by his own will or power. Sin carries with it the poisonous venom of moral decay, that should be, not decal, and ultimate perdition. And Satan is the father and king of it all. This woe is a warning to turn from deception and sin to God. Those are the words of Homer Haywood. So you can take challenge to my words, but that's Homer's.
To me, it seems the fact that it's got a woman's hair, it has a face of a man. These all can be things that, and the power of a king and might. These all can be things that will destroy people without proper perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because of the symbolism, people have a natural gravity to point to some physical thing here on earth. I think God at this time is kind of laying out his sequence of events. And we'll get there when we open this little book. And this little book that we're going to see, we don't even get to see the contents with. John is asked to eat that little book. Because that is, we opened the big scroll that had writing all over it. And we said that's the complete plan of God. So the conjecture is that the little book is a small portion of which, was the plan of God fully accomplished on the cross. Okay, then why need the church?
Well,
Wasn't the charge yet to still tell everybody about it?
plus, I mean, there was a period that he is seated, and while the powers erode and
Yeah.
decay before him.
Right. So the complete plan of God is not done yet. And I think we're still in the little book period where we're supposed to go be telling everybody about what's to come and converting people to this plan.
God's plan of salvation was completed
Yes.
in Christ's death. But then it's like works. What we're supposed to do, which Christ tells us just before he ascends, is go out and tell everybody. That's the outgrowth of your love for God, is to go out and tell everybody. That's a work.
Yeah.
That's where
And what we see here is the world's going to fight it. And here's how God makes it happen. He encourages things sometimes by torture and torment and plague, or eliminating the foundations of the things that sin sets up, so that you want to rely on something different. So, anyway, enough of me. Quarter till. Guys in the back, sharp white cheddar and dill bread for you.
So to me, I was sitting back there.